feeling a bit down in the winter months, there's some aromatherapy oils that are very good, because when you apply them to the skin, this is backed up by research, they do actually get into the bloodstream. But ones that are very good for mood and balancing is bergamot. Bergamot's lovely, and it's just such a wonderful smell, and it's very uplifting and has a lot of refreshing qualities. So that's my first tip. My second tip would be Epsom salts. If you have a bath at home, put that in your bath and soak in that. It's very uplifting. It's high in magnesium, and it can actually be absorbed into the skin. So you get the magnesium boost, which is great for us menopausal women. And then when it comes to nutrition, is to eat in balance. So have your protein, have your carbohydrates from vegetables, and then think about healthy fats, things like avocados, olive oil, nuts and seeds, and cook from scratch. Try to avoid all these ultra processed foods. That will make a huge difference in your overall health and how you feel.
I'm Phillipa. In this podcast, me and my generous guests delve deep into the world of menopause. Buckle up and get ready to embark on a journey of empowerment and self-discovery as we embrace the change. Welcome to Moving Through Menopause. Hello, it's me again, and we're back. We're talking all about menopause. I love to talk all about menopause. It's really so very important, and I'm going to keep banging on about it. So get used to it. But today, I'm not on my own. I've got a wonderful guest here to back the conversation back and forth and share our wellness wisdom with you. Joining me today, I've got Alison Bladh, and she's a registered nutritional therapist. We're going to be sharing our top tips to beat the winter blues. But before we get started, I really would love to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where you can see all these episodes from the past. I'm Move with Phillipa is who I am on YouTube, and loads of fun and frolics to be had over there. Or if audio is your preferred medium, then subscribe to me on Apple Podcasts, Moving Through Menopause. We've got all the tips and hacks that you could possibly wish for. And so moving to our topic for today, this time of year is really not my favorite time. And actually, I haven't left the house for 2 days because it's just literally too cold. Now, that's me in the UK, because we've been going below freezing, which it's not my favorite thing at all. But Alison Bladh, tell me, you're maybe even colder than I am today.
Yeah, thanks. But it's lovely to be here talking to you again. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually in Stockholm in Sweden at the moment. I spend my time in London and in Stockholm. And I just thought today this is such a perfect topic, because it is absolutely horrible here today. It's literally blowing a snowstorm.
Oh.
And last night it went down to minus 20. So winter blues are certainly a good topic to talk about. I'm like you, but today I haven't been out of the house. It just doesn't look very inviting at all.
No, I know. And, this is a very real phenomenon for lots of people, that this time of year, especially after the holiday season, and what is there to look forward to? Your summer holiday seems so very far away at this point. And so there are physiological reasons why we might experience a dip in the mood at this time of year, aren't there, Alison?
Yes, there certainly are. One thing that we think about is something called seasonal affective disorder. It's known as SAD, and this is something where you just feel down. You feel depressed. You have like a loss of energy. You kind of feel a bit moody. You have that kind of like, I want to just go and hibernate feeling. You don't really want, like we were saying, you don't necessarily want to go out or anything. But this is an actual condition, because it can really make you feel terrible. And when we're talking about menopause, you're already maybe feeling tired, lack of energy, maybe having mood swings, and then if you've got this seasonal affective disorder, maybe, on top of that, it can really make you feel quite terrible.
I mean, there's no doubt that these hormonal fluctuations really speak to the emotional center in the brain. But, the darkness, so many of us are bemoaning the fact that it's dark when you wake up and dark when you're coming home from work, or if you finish work and then it's dark, and oh my goodness, it must be even worse where you are. And so we're not getting the sunlight that, honestly, I can literally feel. It's almost like a personality shift that happens when at that shift of the seasons, the lift that you feel from that change in the weather. And we can't just wait around for that to happen. It will come at some point. But whilst you're in this time of year when it feels like you're wading through treacle in Wellington boots, sometimes. So we wanted to come along and give you some suggestions for things that we can do to address these physiological deficiencies. I suppose there's one thing to think, and that is that actually it's quite a natural process for us to feel a bit like hibernating at this time of the year, isn't it, Alison? If we were in nature and there was no artificial light, we'd have no choice but to hibernate and sleep more and rest more. And I think that the season is intended for that. And our Western lifestyles, we're sort of fighting against what is our natural predisposition at this time of year. And so it can feel like that uphill struggle. But needless to say, we can't hibernate, can we? We might want to, but we can't hibernate. So we've got to grasp the nettle and think about things that we can do to lift the mood, lift the spirits. And so I know you and I were chatting a moment ago about the fact that cold weather and darkness makes us crave those carbohydrates more than usual. And so there's a real reason why this happens to us, isn't there?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting, isn't it? Because the craving for carbohydrates that you maybe already have when you're in kind of midlife, that menopausal stage. But then when winter kicks in, you might not be so aware of it, but it's very common that we crave more carbohydrates in the winter. And there are actually reasons behind that. It's not just, that, oh, I'm craving carbohydrates. One of the reasons is that a decrease in serotonin levels. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, and this helps regulate mood, amongst other things. And sunlight helps to maintain serotonin levels. So in the winter, when you're living in darker climates, the reduction in sunlight can really have an effect on our serotonin levels. And when you're lacking in serotonin, your body's very clever, and you need carbohydrates to synthesize and produce serotonin. So your body will be thinking, well, hold on a minute, we're a bit low on serotonin here. We need more carbohydrates to help boost serotonin production. So that is one of the reasons why you may be getting more cravings for carbohydrates. And then you've got the other hormone, melatonin, which we've probably all heard of, haven't we? Which is the hormone that makes us feel sleepy in the evenings. And because of the darkness, you can lack energy, and that lack of energy and the feeling, your body's thinking, oh, I should be going to sleep now because it's so dark, can really make you feel sluggish. And when you feel sluggish, what do? You crave carbohydrates. So you've kind of got those two things going on. And it was interesting what you were saying before, Phillipa, that historically in the winter, we were, your body's there, you want to conserve energy. So your cravings and consumption of carbohydrates would be more. So again, you've got that cravings going on, and also there's a lot of like emotional eating, because when you're at home and it's cold and dark, and like you say, you maybe haven't got anything to look forward to in the next couple of weeks or months. Food is very lovely, isn't it? It's very comforting. So that emotional side can come in there where you crave things. And then also maybe a disruption to your routine or your diet in the winter. You can't be as active, you can't be as outside as much, and that can also affect the way that we eat and the things that we crave. So there's many different aspects going on there for these cravings, but I think it's knowledge is power, isn't it? And knowing that, okay, I'm having these cravings, what can I do? That's the main thing, isn't it? Taking control of it.
Yes, that's really important for us to feel like we're driving the car rather than being in the passenger seat.
Yeah. So that's a great way of putting it.
But I think, why does it matter that we're craving carbohydrates? Should we just not have a few more at this time of the year? Is it not usual for us to insulate our bodies in the wintertime? And I think where this falls down really is the fact that there's no seasons in Western life, really. I mean, we have weather, but as far as food is concerned, it's available all year round, pretty much the same stuff, isn't it? So what used to be a time of hardship in the wintertime is no longer thus. And so the fact that you would be seeking out food at that time, you might be looking for it, but you couldn't find it as much. We're finding it everywhere now, aren't we? So if you couldn't find it much, then you might, you lose a few. And then in the summer, it would be more abundant and you'd get it back on. And this is, you see this in nature, don't you, with animals? But that's not happening. That seasonality in food is not happening now. So that means that I guess we have to inject what is a bit of self-control into this whole situation. The only reason for doing that is to make sure that, we get to the end of the winter and we can still fit in those jeans that we could at the beginning of the winter. But and this is serious because there is evidence, isn't there, that gradual weight gain occurs over our lifetime if we're not careful. That you can gain a pound or a kilo a year, and if you keep that up, then our health potentially can suffer as a consequence of letting the situation getting out of our control, I suppose. So we're back to that self-discipline element. Alison's raising her eyebrows at this point.
No, it's true. And that's the tricky piece, isn't it? The self-discipline.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and when we're talking about, and it's so true what you said, that everything, we're not saying that you shouldn't eat carbohydrates, but it's everything in moderation, isn't it? And it's because we're in an environment where there is food everywhere, it's very easy to get into that kind of eating too much, maybe larger portions in the winter. And if you're doing that regularly, it's your daily habits that add up, then you most likely will gain weight. But it's not just that. It's what we have to think of, especially during menopause, is blood sugar balance.
Oh,
We
yes.
have to think of all of those things that are maybe one of the symptoms of menopause, that carbohydrates aren't necessarily helpful in that area. But also an important thing when we talk about carbohydrates, I'm predominantly talking about the refined, the ultra processed carbohydrates that are high in sugar. Vegetables are carbohydrates, and they're great, and there's no restriction on vegetables. You can eat as many vegetables as you want, but it's choosing your carbohydrates. I'm absolutely not saying that you shouldn't eat carbohydrates, but you should just be mindful of the type of carbohydrates you're eating, and having that piece of cake or a bagel or a muffin is fine, but maybe not every day. You have to do things in moderation, because those habits can creep in, and then you're eating these things daily, and that can have not only an effect on how you feel in the winter, but on your overall health.
That's absolutely right. And all food is not equal is definitely the case. And that sort of mood association, you can barely separate the two. That the effect of the different kinds of food on the brain. And you might have experienced that at the end of the holiday season when you're kind of almost craving a salad. aren't you? You've got to the end of that time when you're indulging, and quite rightly, for the whole, celebration season. But that's, maybe you're feeling more even of the brain fog that we struggle with at menopause. That, and certainly feeling just sluggish. So, this thing really is very cyclical, in as much as it fuels a sort of downward spiral potentially if we're not careful, in terms of how we feel about ourselves, but just how we feel generally. And so I think there is an element of taking charge and making a decision that is required if change is something that you're contemplating. And if you're feeling out of kilter, then maybe that is a good time to think about these things. So lifestyle medicine is really the thing that I talk about all the time. My family are totally fed up of hearing me talk about it. I do know. So I had to come on here and talk to somebody else about it. So you mentioned, well, I mean, you've talked about a lot of things already. The sunshine is one thing that even, in the Western Hemisphere. Oh, hang on, have I got that right? Is it the Northern Hemisphere? I think that's what I'm meaning.
Yeah, I'm not
the Western.
No, it's the Northern Hemisphere, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So in the Northern Hemisphere, in the wintertime, the sun just doesn't get high enough in the sky for us to synthesize that vitamin D from sunlight. And so this is the one vitamin that doctors will say that we should supplement in the wintertime. Am I right saying that, Alison? As a nutritional therapist, I need to know.
Yes, you are correct in saying that. It's I mean, supplementation, that's a whole big discussion, isn't it? But vitamin D is something that the NHS actually recommend for certain population groups, and if you live in darker areas, that you should take that as a supplement, because vitamin D is actually quite hard to get from food. Enough of it, the amount that we need daily. It's in things like fatty fish, etc., but it's difficult to get from food. So yeah, totally right. It's beneficial to take that as a supplement, but it's very important for many things, vitamin D, including our immune function and mood regulation. So it's a really crucial thing. And a lot of people, if you're not taking supplementation, you can be deficient in vitamin D, and it becomes even more obvious in the winter months when there's no sunlight, because your body actually produces vitamin D via sunlight. It synthesizes it in the sun. That's why it's so important to be outside, when there's daylight and sunlight for the purpose of vitamin D. But one other thing, I actually brought it with me here, Phillipa, because one thing that I use is my therapy light.
I wish you'd told me you were going to bring yours, because I just got one this week. And
did you?
But mine's the size of an A5 piece of paper.
Oh, right.
So it looks slightly.
So this is actually quite big, but
yeah, it's huge.
I find it, obviously living in Stockholm quite a few months of the year, I've really noticed a difference. And my husband, it made me smile when you were saying that you talk nothing about, to your family. And I do the same. My husband's so sick of me talking about menopause and health and functional medicine. And when I bought this light, he was like, "Oh, what's that? What have you bought?" Oh, every morning now I see that light has kind of sneaked off, and I find him using it, and he's really, really seen a difference. And I have as well. You need to use it in the morning, of course, because you don't want to be stimulated, but it really has an effect on your circadian rhythm. I don't know if you've used yours yet.
Yes, I've been turning it on, as you say. I get up in the morning and I can position it where, like, in front of where the kettle is, because that's where I gravitate to in the morning, and it's on the windowsill in front of me, and I'm there faffing about with tea and whatnot, and I've got the light looking at me. So first thing in the morning, as you say, to give you that early morning boost that influences then the regulation of these hormones for sleep and such like. So yeah, I only started a few days ago, but I'm willing to try anything once.
Going back to the SAD, the seasonal affective disorder, that is actually, these lamps are recommended for people that, you know, may be suffering from this condition. It's for anyone that maybe is interested in buying one, do some research, because there's a very big difference in the quality of them, and you really need to purchase one that has, you know, is good enough and will have an effect.
And there's a measure, isn't there, of the brightness or the intensity?
Yeah.
So that's important to consider. So yeah, do your homework. And I basically, a friend of mine got this particular one, and she said it was helping her. So I thought it was good enough for me, and I would give it a try. But you know, seasonal affective, it's not a laughing matter, I should say, because although I do laugh because that's just how I am, but I have struggled with low mood, anxiety, you know, a lifetime's history of struggling with low mood and such like. So it is a path that I've navigated my whole life. And so the tools in my toolbox, I have quite a few to deal with these things when they rear their head, you know. And it's not always just the winter, it can be any time of year, but the seasons can be a time when other people might just start to feel a bit. And so the light box is a new one. I've never tried that before, and I'm excited to sort of. And anyway, it's, you know, you don't need the big lights on. You can just have this thing.
Yeah, it's very bright, that's for sure.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking that you shouldn't maybe look straight at it, just sort of have it there shining at you.
I actually have it by the side or kind of in front of me when I'm working at my desk, but it has to be a certain distance away from you as well. I think it's an arm's length.
Oh, okay.
You don't want to have it, you know, right in there is, you should read the instructions.
I'm terrible for not reading instructions, honestly, and just plugging something in and getting on with it. Arm's length. I like that. I'm glad we had that conversation. I shall bear that in mind now that I'm, you know, like this.
But it is bright, yeah.
It is bright. Yeah, no, they are bright. So you give yourself a dose of bright light first thing in the morning when you first get up out of bed, and that can really help with the circadian rhythms that get. I mean, I don't know that they're out of sync. I think they're probably in sync with nature and out of sync with Western modern life is what I think, you know. But this is the world we live in, so we have to function in this world. But lifestyle measures, lifestyle medicine, it's powerful stuff, this lifestyle medicine. And so other things, other approaches, movement approaches that you can consider, breath work. This is something I've come to later in my own life. And so I do lots of different breath techniques in my yoga work. I mean, I get high doing this. You almost, you know, you're almost giddy after doing it. And so oxygenating the body, awakening the brain centers. If you're struggling, breath work can be very powerful. And so we're just going to do this technique, Alison, called the Haaa breath. Ha, like that. And it's a bit like if you were steaming your, you know, if you were steaming your glasses to wipe them,
Yeah.
like this. And so the first thing to do whenever you're going to think about breathing practices is to sit up lovely and straight so that your diaphragm and your larynx are aligned vertically. And that's the pathway that the air will travel through. So you don't want any kinks in the pathway for the air to travel. And we're going to breathe in through the nostrils, and then we're going to do that sound like you're breathing or fogging up a mirror. So when you're ready, first of all, empty all the air out of your lungs. So you're starting at 0, and then inhale and count to 3 as you inhale through the nostrils, and then and do that for 6 if you can. And at first you might think, I'm running out, so don't worry, take another breath in. A full breath of air, and then So you're making a closure at the back of your throat to slow the flow of air in through the nostrils and breathing out. And then just rest and breathe normally, because when you're doing these breathing practices, you can send yourself a bit haywire if you're not careful. So give yourself a moment. And so these are things that you can practice, brief interventions that can just help to shift how we feel right there and then in the moment. If you're thinking, if you just have that moment of, I've got something to deal with, we all have that going through our day. I've got a phone call I'd rather not deal with. Do something, a brief intervention before you have to tackle these things. And it can really just create this shift, immediate shift in the central nervous system. How did you get on? What do you think?
I'm a huge believer in breathing exercises. I think it's just wonderful. It's free, it's easy to do, it takes no time whatsoever, and it really makes a difference. I love that. Very easy, very simple to do, and just it resets everything, doesn't it? As you said, Phillipa.
Yeah, it totally does. So keeping our stress levels under control can be really important all around menopause, all through, around and about menopause, regardless of the time of year, but even more so when we're feeling that struggle of seasonal affective disorder or the January blues. Stress management is so important. I mean, food fuels how we feel as well, doesn't it? So certain foods might fuel those feelings, and things like stimulants, I suppose, would it be caffeine type things that might raise the levels of worry, anxiety? Is that something that we should cut down on, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you're feeling, in menopause in general, the things like caffeine, like alcohol, energy drinks, all of those sort of drinks aren't really your friend, because if you're feeling terrible and if you're having, menopausal symptoms, and you're maybe in the winter not feeling, so good, it will just make you feel worse. So it's better to reduce or eliminate these things. It's not maybe so easy just to eliminate them, but try to reduce caffeine. And don't forget, there are, now there's so many good caffeine-free products on the market. So if you're a big coffee or tea lover, that there are actually some very good products that are caffeine-free that you could try. Alcohol, I mean, that's a huge debate, isn't it? But it might make you feel better just in that moment.
In the short.
Have that glass of wine, but the knock-on effects of that, you won't feel good afterwards, and it can affect your sleep. If you're already feeling maybe a bit down, it won't make you feel any better. So I think alcohol is something really for menopausal women and women that maybe are a bit depressed in the winter. Just think of reducing it, because it will make you feel better. I know a lot of people have like dry January, don't they? Where they try and, not to drink anything. Maybe like after the Christmas festivities, you think, oh, that's it. I've had enough. I need to, stop drinking. But alcohol has such an effect on the bodily systems, which already, when we're going through menopause, we can be suffering from all these symptoms. It could just make things worse, basically.
Yeah. So what about things that we could help to address this chemistry in the brain? I read about tryptophan being something that might be help us in this regard. Am I right, Alison, or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Tryptophan. I mean, when we look, that is needed to synthesize what we call our happy hormones. And, going back to serotonin, dopamine, all of these hormones that make us give us the feelings that we want. Oxytocin, that's like the love, the cuddle hormone. And what we want to think about is eating protein, because we need protein to synthesize neurotransmitters. And these really have an effect on the brain and, how we're feeling. And also, going back to removing sugar and ultra processed foods, because that amongst many things, can cause inflammation in the body,
Mm.
which can mood and how we feel. And then, you can't talk about mood and the brain without talking about the gut, because
Oh,
there is a
yeah.
huge connection between the gut and the brain. We're finding out that now even more so in research because of the microbiome, which is the gut bacteria. What a huge connection there is between that and the brain. So how your gut bacteria is, if that's in balance and you've got lots of the good bacteria, that is very beneficial for our overall emotional state. So eating, you want to eat fiber, basically. So if you're eating a lot of vegetables, fiber rich foods like whole grains, you'll be getting that wonderful fiber. And all the fermented foods are also very good for gut health, like your sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented vegetables. They're all good for gut health and good gut bacteria.
Yes, it really is important to look at this in the broadest sense. And I really do feel that it is a multifaceted approach that works the best. So, I think if we think about nutrition as nourishing the bacteria in the gut, and we know that they get that from the fibrous foods, the brightly colored fruits and vegetables. We know we need the protein for muscle building and for these important to build the hormones even and neurotransmitters, as you say. So the one thing we don't really need is sugar. We love
No.
it. We absolutely love it, but we don't really need it. So, if we can think about having the things rather than depriving ourselves, oh, I mustn't have this, I mustn't have that, go out and think of all the wonderful things that we could have. And the palate will adjust to these flavors over time. That you will then, when you have something that's sweet, perhaps you'll be thinking, gee whiz, this is so jolly sweet, and before you probably wouldn't have even noticed.
No, it's very true. It's about, you want to nourish your body. So you want to eat foods that nourish your body and, say to yourself, I choose to eat these foods because they nourish my body. And I choose not to eat this array of foods because they're not nourishing for my body. And it doesn't have to be, one, doesn't have to be difficult. And two, there are so many delicious foods that come under the nourish your body area. There's so many wonderful fruit and vegetables and whole grains. And, we haven't even spoken about healthy fats, which again are needed for mood and brain health. But it's a mindset, isn't it? It's getting into that mindset that I choose to nourish my body. I don't want to eat these foods. Sugar actually has no nutritional value. So it is delicious and we all love it, but in moderation, it's fine. But, because it's difficult, isn't it, to cut sugar out completely from your diet? Very difficult, but it's about your daily habits.
Yeah, and I think if you are feeling under par, your body's maybe trying to tell you something. And if we can tune in to those messages, coming from the gut quite often to the brain, and then make these simple interventions that ultimately just enhance the quality of life in the short term, but also in regards to our long-term overall health. Chronic health conditions are so becoming the norm, really, for too many people. And so small steps, take it a step at a time, but that think before you act can be a sort of, is this really in this moment, is this really going to have the desired effect? Whatever it is you might choose to do. And this is not really my area of expertise, but working with people over a prolonged period of time, helping them to implement lifestyle changes. And specifically for me, it's movement, obviously. Talking about exercise, I mean, we've hardly talked about exercise, and that's my favorite soapbox to jump up onto. So in terms of exercise, half an hour of exercise in a day can again create this shift in the biochemistry of the brain to increase those happy hormones. Walking, cycling, swimming, doing yoga, doing Pilates, those are my two favorite things that I love to do. But yoga in particular, over the last few years of being perimenopausal and into menopause, is something that I've really begun to appreciate how it makes me feel when I do it. And I don't just mean my muscles, Yes, I'm more supple for doing it. Yes, it can keep me strong. But the thing that I really notice after doing it is that experience of the lifting of the spirits, the lifting of the mood. And you can't imagine that until you've kind of experienced it for yourself. So, grasp the nettle and give some of these things a try. Are you a keen yogi, Alison?
I just totally agree with everything you said there. Yes, I love yoga. I actually did a yoga class today at lunchtime, and for exercise for me is non-negotiable. I feel terrible if I don't move my body. Yoga, I love yoga, but I also am very keen on strength training, because I realize as we get older as women, we lose muscle mass, and muscles really, they're the organ of longevity. We need to keep them.
Yeah.
So I go to the gym, and I don't go and do hours of weights, but I do things like the body pump classes. There's a variation of different classes that I do. Walking, I love. Running, I think running was very interesting for me coming into perimenopause, because I've always been a great runner. Love running. And I mean, I can still run, but I do not have the energy to run the distances that I used to. And it's fascinating because of the metabolic changes that happen in the body and the effects on the mitochondria, which is like the energy part of the cell. You just don't have that. It's like you're running on empty. I found it fascinating, because I always thought, no, I'll be able to carry on and it won't affect me. But yeah, it did. But in answer to your question, I'm a big exercise fan, absolutely.
So again, small steps. If you set yourself up to fail by setting the bar too high, something that's unachievable, make it 15 minutes. I like to do it before I've thought of anything else. So, because if you get distracted, involved into something, then sometimes you just don't fit it in at all. Because I'm teaching all the time, I'm kind of moving quite a bit anyway. But I still have to go out of my way to do the things that I need to do to nourish my body. And I think it is hard, that idea that when you're feeling tired, how can exercise possibly help with this? But to get that experience for yourself of the energy boosting potential that comes from doing exercise. And so what you're talking about is some high intensity exercises can, starts to drain you of those energy reserves. So those little budges, those mitochondria, so like Duracell batteries in every cell, they get charged up when we exercise. So that idea that exercise is draining the batteries, it's entirely the opposite. But, if you're not used to it, you might think, oof, this feels a bit hard, or it feels tiring, or whatever. And that there's an adjustment period for you to get to that point where you then, like you just said, don't feel like yourself unless you do those exercise interventions. So that takes the time to get to that point. That doesn't happen right away. So don't be discouraged if you're thinking of introducing exercise, and when is it going to feel easy? It may never feel easy, but it will always be good for you, won't it, Alison?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. It's so beneficial for you, isn't it? Exercise. It's like, I think it's like vegetables. I think there's so many different opinions on nutrition and how we should eat, but I think majority of people agree that vegetables are good for you, and I think majority of people agree that exercise is good for you.
Yeah. I think we've given people some suggestions. Have you got a top 3 to summarize the top 3 things that we could think about?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm talking about winter blues, and I'm talking about very specific things that people can start doing. We haven't actually spoken about this, but I'm a nutritional therapist, but I'm also an esthetician. I'm also a beauty therapist, and have worked many years in that area as well. And one thing that I very much love is aromatherapy oils, and they can be beneficial for many things, including menopausal women. But when we look at, you're feeling a bit down in the winter months, there's some oils in particular that are very good. They boost you. They make you feel better. They give you like an energy boost. The aromatherapy oil are just amazing because when you apply them to the skin, they do, and this is backed up by research, they do actually get into the bloodstream. But ones that are very good for mood and balancing is bergamot. Bergamot's lovely, and it's just such a wonderful smell, and it's very uplifting and has a lot of refreshing qualities. Lavender, I mean, lavender is fantastic. I actually have some lavender and put it on my pillow at night. Good for relaxation, mood control, but also good for people that have problems sleeping, which we can obviously have. And I mean, there's many others. Peppermint is a great one as well for uplifting if you're feeling a bit down. So that's my first tip. My second tip would be, I'm sure everyone's heard of Epsom salts.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Epsom salts, if you have a bath at home, and if you can just buy Epsom salts very easily and put that in your bath and soak in that, it's wonderful. And that is very uplifting. It's high in magnesium, and it can actually be absorbed into the skin. So you get like a magnesium boost, which is great for us menopausal women and also in the winter months. Easy thing to do, makes you feel great. And then when it comes to nutrition, is to eat in balance. So have your protein, have your carbohydrates from vegetables, and then think about healthy fats. You need avocado, things like avocados, olive oil, nuts and seeds, all of those lovely healthy fats, and cook from scratch. Try to avoid all these ultra processed foods. That will make a huge difference in your overall health and how you feel.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. My tips, if I had any, move every day. Move every day, and move in different ways as well. Because if you're not sure what you fancy, a bit of experimentation might just be in order. So move every day on purpose, so that it's something that you go out of your way to do, whether it's to walk in nature, whether it's to do a yoga video, whatever you choose, whether it's to lift some weights in the kitchen as the kettle boils. So move every day and move on purpose. That's number one. Number two, breathing. We went through that breath practice earlier, the Haaa breath. And there are lots of different breath practices, but just even 6 rescue breaths, they call them. So it's 6 full breaths. I hesitate to use the word deep breaths, because when you say take a deep breath, somebody always goes like this, and actually they always do that. Yeah. What you actually want is for the air to go all the way down. Look, I'm going to tip my camera. Oh, look, the daisies. That looks a bit wrong, doesn't it? The daisies on my jumper.
Looks nice, lots of flowers, very pretty.
Yeah, summery. There's another one. So you want the air to go all the way down to the bases of the lungs. And so it's a slow, full breath. And think about your rib cage expanding upwards and outwards. And so 6 of those, 6 rescue breaths in a moment of panic or frantic or worry or just feeling a little bit low. Have a go at that. 6 deep breaths. And then you've got something that's very brief and you can just move on. And so the other thing, I said move every day, but can I be more specific? I think what is wonderful if we can think of something that takes us from top to toe. So moving your neck in all the ways that your neck should move, nodding your chin to your chest, looking your eyes up to the ceiling. You can go through a whole day without moving the joints fully in the body. And as we are still, there is connective tissue fibrils or fibers growing constantly in the body. And this is partly what contributes to the feeling of stiffness in a morning when you wake up, because you've been still all night and these little soldiers have been at work in your body building connective tissue. You're looking surprised. It's a real phenomenon. They call it the fuzz. And there's videos you can watch on YouTube of real-time videos of this white, bit like spiders' webs of connective tissue growing. And don't be scared. It's a perfectly natural, normal phenomenon. It's like skin. We're being replaced, aren't we? Every day, we're just being replaced. And so this turnover of cells is continuously happening. Think of it like that. But if you didn't move, then the tissue can get a bit kind of stuck. And sometimes you might have had that experience where you move and you kind of feel a click or a snap or something. And the thinking is that that's those little fibers of connective coming adrift or breaking off. And that's a good thing. We want that because we don't want to get stiff. So I hope I'm not frightening you with this story. So think about every joint in your body, moving from the neck, the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, the fingers, the thumb itself, in and out.
It feels so nice as well, that neck.
Oh,
It's
the neck.
lovely to move your neck and
I know.
shoulders.
Oh gosh, I know. I've not moved enough today yet either. So, and there's no time like the present. Grasp this opportunity if you feel in any way enthused by our conversation to implement some of our suggestions, then really get on with it today. Don't wait, because tomorrow you might have forgotten. So thank you so much, Alison, for coming along and having a chat and sharing your wisdom. I know you've got a lot of years of experience in this field of health and wellness. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's always lovely to talk to you, Phillipa. It's a pleasure. Really nice talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to anybody that's listened through this whole conversation. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us. And so if you wanted more of this, I mean, honestly, it just gets better. Subscribe to at Move with Phillipa, my YouTube channel, and all the videos are there. And then if you prefer the audio, go to the Apple Podcasts, Moving Through Menopause. And if you see my face, you'll know that you're in the right place. So thank you again. It's been a blast. As always, I'll be back with another episode. And I think Alison might just be coming back again soon as well. So we look forward to chatting with you again soon. Take care and bye for now.